Hi everybody, welcome back to My Hips Don't Lie with Debora Utley. I'm so very excited to see you today. I really couldn't wait to share with you kind of where my mind went today. Last night, my husband and I finished the Tiger documentary, the documentary about Tiger Woods. It's a 2-part series on HBO Max. If you can, I highly recommend it. I thought it was really, really great, and just a really cool telling of this, machine of an athlete, and a picture of somebody's rise, pretty long fall, and humiliating fall, and resurrection. It was just really, it stuck with me. It was really inspirational for me. And then I had a dream about it, about forgiveness. It was kind of the theme of my dream last night. And then I woke up, and today I kind of wrote a bunch of musings about it and a bunch of things about forgiveness, and the part that it's played, the important part, I believe, that it's played in my life. The thing with Tiger was he had some very humiliating lapses in judgment, and he paid a very long and very public price. Something I didn't really realize about him as an athlete was his constant pain and therefore addiction to opioids, and the multiple surgeries that he had. I guess for some reason I didn't realize that happened, and I didn't realize that was something that he went through. I just thought he was a bit of a rake, if you would. But it turns out it was a lot more than that, and a lot deeper. And watching him in his lowest moments was really heartbreaking. And a lot of people I know would be like, well, he deserved it. Look what he did. And I don't really like the word deserve. I don't think any of us, I don't know. I don't like that word. I don't like it positively or negatively. I don't think we deserve anything. And I don't think we deserve anything. So I just don't like that word, but it was really heartbreaking to see some of the decisions that he made, and some of the, like I said, public whippings he had to take. And to then in 2019 see him come back and win the Masters, see his fans and legions of people come back to him and offer him love and support. I don't know, it was just it was a beautiful thing, and I was so happy for him in that moment, and watching him hug his son and his mother, and it was just a reminder that, you know what? We are all worthy of forgiveness, and we're all worthy of that love and devotion. And it just kind of made me think about how forgiveness has played a part in my life. So I wanted to tell the story of when my stepfather passed away. And the things that I had to come to terms with and do in that time. So I may do this in a couple parts, because I did have a couple really sweet family members tell me that a 29-minute video is just way too long to watch. So for all of you out there that have an attention span like I do, I maybe not need to tell such long stories on in one episode. I know if I saw something for 29 minutes, I'd probably go, yeah, pass. To which I will say, you don't have to watch it all in one sitting, but I understand. So anyway, this might be a 2 or 3-parter, but it has to do with the forgiveness that I showed my mother and the forgiveness that I bestowed upon my stepfather, and that I was able to really kind of cleanse myself of it, right? They say that, holding a grudge or not forgiving someone is like drinking poison and expecting them to die, right? You're really poisoning yourself when you hold on to the wrongdoings that others maybe have bestowed upon you. And so it's really kind of a selfish act to forgive, because I believe that when I allowed their cleansing, if you will, and let them be free of what their sins upon me. I know there's a really big, good word for that, but my brain's just not quite there yet. Absolve, that's the word I was looking for. When I absolved them, basically, of what they did to me, I was really cleansing myself. So on Thanksgiving Day in 2009, I got a call from my mom. Now, I think I told you, but my mom stayed married to my stepfather until he died, and was, living freely at this time. And my mom, as I said, suffers from mental illness, and throughout my life has been hospitalized. And it kind of was on what felt like an every 8 to 10 year cycle. She would have a complete nervous breakdown and need to be hospitalized. I have a really vivid memory of the first time I remember when I was a young girl, maybe 7 or 8. And I don't remember taking her to the hospital, but I remember going to the hospital and her screaming and yelling to get her out of there, to take her home. She doesn't belong there. And I remember being terrified. It was terrifying. My mom would hallucinate back then when I was young. And she would always think people were trying to kill her or get her. And so my stepfather or my grandmother, I'm not sure, must have decided she needed to go to the hospital. But I don't remember the taking her there, but I remember that. I also remember most of my youth, my mother suffered from anorexia. My mother's very petite. She's only 4'11", smaller boned than me, very teeny. And I remember often that she would sustain herself with coffee and carrots, and the palms of her hands would be orange because all she ate was carrots. And she was just painfully thin. And then she would break that and eat and plump up, right? And plump for her was probably like 140. And then she would realize and think she was fat, and right back to complete, not healthy eating, complete feast or famine. So that was the first breakdown that I remembered. And then my grandma told me, years later when I was older, that her first breakdown was around my birth. So this is probably something I should probably ask the people that were around at the time, but I believe that she was probably hospitalized shortly after my birth. So then again, when I was like 8 or 9, and then there was a time in college, my grandmother called. I would call and talk to my grandma often, and she said that she had to have my mom, committed, as we said. And at that stage, I didn't really care. I was still very angry at my mom at that time of my life. I hadn't really wrapped my head around why she was such a bad mother, just that she was a bad mother. And didn't protect me, didn't keep me safe, didn't care for me well. Then again, when I was at my latest job, and it was my first year in my new job as choir director at Buffalo Grove, and my mom was in need of being hospitalized again. So this time I needed to make the decision if I were going to care for her or leave it to her husband. So this was the week of my first really big performance at BG, and I had to leave. I had to go take care of her. So I went, and I remember my grandma Fitz helped me, came with me to the hospital, and had her checked in, had her cared for, had her medicated, had a prescription given, and out of the hospital she went back to her life. And I don't imagine she continued taking her meds, right? So now cut to Thanksgiving of 2009. She called, frantic. Phil, her husband, was in the hospital. She didn't know what to do. She needed money. And I was like, oh, okay, let's calm down. Let's figure this out. Told her everything would be okay. I'd call her later. It's Thanksgiving Day. I'm with my husband, and we were doing our traditional, we go out to dinner, the two of us, usually on Thanksgiving. My husband is a very successful football coach and often has practice and a game to prepare for that weekend. So we don't usually have the ability to travel and see our long distance or our far away family. And so we usually would just go out to dinner, the two of us. And I think this particular year we were going out with his father. And I remember being completely distracted all day, worried about my mom. But I'll be honest, I was mostly worried about myself. What am I going to do if he dies? I'm going to have to take care of her. She might have to move in with me. I can't do that. Like, I was spinning selfishly. But I was really scared for myself. He survived Thanksgiving, and I think went home, but I'm not really sure at this point. I did get a call a little bit before winter break in December, so a couple weeks later, from one of Phil's sisters, that Phil passed away, and they had my mom. and she wasn't well. So a second time, dropped everything and knew I needed to get to her and probably get her to a hospital. So I once again rallied my friend Vicky and said, hey, look, I've got to go do this. I don't think I can do it alone. And I'm going to need somebody rational if and when I just emotionally struggle with this. So she, of course, agreed to come with me. And we got into my little Prius in the dead of winter and started to make our way to Iowa. So I called Phil's sister back and I said, hey, you know what, we're coming. What's your address? I'm going to come collect my mom and get her cared for. And now here's where I can't remember the order of the conversation, but that was all agreed upon. And then at some point I had said, look, this is my mother, and she just lost her husband. And, you know, regardless of who he was to me, that was my mother's husband. And I will see to it that my mother's wishes for his internment are met. I will say this. One of the only smart purchases they ever made together was that they pre-purchased their plots, their burial plots. All of their expenses were already paid for. So that was really convenient. But regardless of my feelings for this monster, in my opinion, I would make sure he was properly buried. I would make sure he had a service. I made sure everyone that should have been was invited. And I made all the plans. I went to the funeral home with my mom. And that's another story. But that portion, you know, we wrote the obit. I wrote the obit, you know. It was really difficult for me to, you know, what were some things that he enjoyed doing? Well, torturing small girls, but I don't think that's going to read well in the paper. So let's say he enjoyed fishing and oil painting. I made sure he was, my mother wanted him cremated and buried. So we buried the ashes in his plot. And I made sure that there was a service. We hired a reverend or pastor. We had a service there at the cemetery. It was really lovely. And I made sure all of his family was there. And it was a horrible, hard thing to do. But that was part of my forgiveness. I made sure he went to his final resting place, absolved, and with a ceremony for my mom and for him and his family. It was very difficult for me to do, but I did that. But that's skipping ahead quite into the story, so I want to go backwards a little bit. So Vicky and I are on the road, and I think we're about an hour away from Phil's sister's house where my mom is. And so I call. I said, hi, it's Debora. We're about an hour away. I'll be at your house. Here's where things went awry. Well, I have to work. I'm not going to be there now. I said, no. I'm on the road from Chicago. I will be there in an hour to collect my mom. You better be there. Hung up on me. I called back. And now I'm looking at Vicky like, are you kidding me? I think we pulled over because now I was fired up. I called back. They answered. Hey, listen, I don't know what's going on here all of a sudden. Well, we just think you're going to get your mom and you're going to put her in the hospital. I go, well, yeah, I might, but I'm not going to dump her anywhere. She's my mother. And you're just going to, you're not going to take care of Phil. This is your responsibility. Now I'm like, I am bent out of shape. I'm like, first of all, it's not my responsibility, but listen, this is my mother's husband. I will make sure everything is done properly. I'm not an asshole. I'm coming to get my mom. You better be there. Or I'm coming with the police. Like, I was just like, what am I going to do? I didn't know what to do. So I'm like frantic. So Vicky and I are just like, what the fuck? So we get close and we are out in the middle of nowhere. We're talking now gravel roads. And I'm starting to get a little fearful. And I'm like looking at Vicky and I'm just like, I've got Deliverance playing in my head. I'm like, they could have shotguns. I don't know what, like I was, again, my thing was safety. I was preparing for the worst. So I'm like, okay, here's the jam. And we pull up and it's this long driveway. And I can see as we turn on, there's like an entire family on this driveway with my mom. And I'm like, again, what the fuck are we getting ourselves into? So I told Vicky, I said, hey, listen, I'm not pulling all the way up there. I'm going to park kind of halfway up. I'm going to leave this car on. You be fucking ready. I'm going to grab her. And if I sense danger, I'm running back here. I'm throwing her in and we're peeling out of here. Like, as much as a Prius can peel out of anywhere. So I was terrified. I was terrified. So I get up, I get out of the car and I start walking towards them and I could kind of sense that, okay, that we're okay. And I get to my mom and she's so tiny and she's so frail. And you could just see she was out of her mind. So I just took her and I just hugged her. And Phil's sister, and for the life of me, I can't think of her name right now, maybe Sharon, gave me a plastic bag of her things. And I think it was also Phil's things from the hospital. And I said, look, I'll be in touch with you. I will call you. I'll let you know everything that we're going to do. And I'll call you soon. And I got my mom in the car. And now this whole time I'm communicating with my Aunt Peg. And she's, talking me through this from out of town. They hadn't moved back to Iowa yet. And I'm thinking Colorado. I'll have to check in on that and where they were at the time, but I think Colorado. We're trying to find a place for my mom. So my mom gets in the car and, she's in the back seat. And I'm like, I don't even know where I was going to go at that time. Oh, no, that's a lie. So we had all this stuff to do. So I had to take her to the funeral home. I had to take her then we found out she needed an ID. The funeral home kind of informed us that, hey, due to their financial situation, which was, they had nothing, you can apply for aid for the funeral costs. But she needs a state ID. So I'm like, okay, I got to get her to the DMV. So I'm trying to think now of the order that we did things. And the first place that we went, I think we went to the funeral home and getting all that stuff figured out. The death certificates. I had to order the death certificates. Had to write the obit, all this stuff, the dates, etc. So anyway, so I think that was my plan of attack. That was the first place we were going to go. So she gets in the car, and I pull out of the driveway safely, and she looks at the dashboard, and she's like, is that my blood pressure? And I was like, what? Is that my blood pressure? And I'm like, no, Mom, that's just the car. It's a speedometer. So I look at Vicky, and I'm like, oh, fuck, what are we going to do? So we go to lunch. We go to lunch first. And we go to lunch at Chick-fil-A. And we're eating. And I'm kind of trying to get my wits about me and get some sustenance. And I see my mom, like another clue. I see her just kind of staring off into space, eating. I'm like, Mom, what are you looking at? I'm just watching TV. There's no TV. So again, I'm like, thank God I had somebody there just to like look at and just basically telepathically just keep saying, what the fuck? I know my Aunt Peg is going to be so mad at me for swearing as she watches this, so I'm sorry, Aunt Peg. So, okay, we've eaten. Got to go to the bathroom. So I'm like, all right, Vicky, we got to tag team this. So we go into the bathroom. I can't remember how this happened, but I think Vicky went to the bathroom first, and then my mom was going to the bathroom. But all I know is I'm about to go to the bathroom, and my mom, I think Vicky was like, Debora, my mom bolts from the bathroom. Bolts. And leaves the restaurant, runs out. So I'm like, shit, pull my pants on, and I run out, and I have to run and catch her. And I'm like, hey, listen, lady, this shit's not gonna fly. What are you doing? And she's like, I gotta get to Phil. And I'm like, oh shit, this is not gonna be an easy day. I'm like, Mom, we've got to go to the courthouse. We've got to get ready for his funeral. We've got to do a few things. I've got to get you. So okay, so next we go to the DMV. We're in the DMV. I don't know how we get this accomplished, but we end up getting her state ID. But in the meantime, while we're standing in there, and she's like looking at everything on the wall, and everything on the wall is her. She's like, oh, look, that's me. And it's like a picture of a bird. Oh, look, that's Phil. I mean, and it was just like, I'm like, oh my God, I've got to get this accomplished, and then maybe I can get her to the hospital. So by the grace of God, we get her state ID. I mean, the picture, she looks like a crazy person on the picture, right? I mean, it's just like, oh my God. But we need this ID to then go to our next location. Okay. So here's where it really breaks bad. So we get into the courthouse, and we get up to the office where we have to fill out all this paperwork to apply for aid for this thing. So it's Vicky and I and my mom. And I have to ask my mom all these questions. I don't know her social security number. Like, that was a mistake. Like, I've got to get all this information, And so we get the forms, and we're sitting, and we're starting to fill out the forms. I've got the clipboard. I don't think anybody else is in there, thank God. And on the wall was like a wanted poster, right? And on this wanted poster, it was like a picture of a girl. And so my mom gets up, and she's like, that's her. And I'm like, oh God, can I just get this fucking paperwork filled out? And I'm like, who, Mom, who? And she's like, that's her. I can't remember the name. She goes, but last night at Sharon's, they took my blood, and they replaced it with this girl's blood. And I'm like, wait, what? And so she's like, that's her. She has my blood. And then again, bolts. I'm like, son of a bitch. So I'm so sorry. I throw the clipboard at the poor receptionist, and I'm out, and I get my mom in the elevator. And I'm like, Mom, what, like, where are you going? You cannot run from me. I have to get to Phil. I have to get to Phil. And this little 4'11", 78-pound bag of bones is stronger than my husband. I'm like, Vicky, we gotta get her to the hospital. So I'm like, how the hell am I gonna get her into the hospital? I've done this before. So back in 2007, when I had to commit her, I had to drag her and I mean drag her from the car, through the parking lot, into the hotel. And so I kind of came up with the idea. I'm in the car and I'm like, Mom, do you want to go to the hospital and get your blood put back in? And she was like, yeah. I said, all right, we're going to go to the hospital and we're going to get your blood put back in. And I'll tell you what happened from there next time. Thanks for being with me. Thank you for allowing me this time to tell these stories about my life and my experience. I really hope they help some of you. All right, I'll see you next time. All my love.